The monuments, the technology, the wealth. From Aristotle to the invention of the internet. For thousands of years, the West has been able to adapt to change, to innovate, and to generate outsized returns in human knowledge and productivity. The rise of the West and the strategy for its continued success all comes from one single accident, the discovery of truth-telling. In these videos, I'm sharing my understanding of the science of propertarianism. I give credit to Kurt Doolittle and the Propertarian Institute for most of his content, which I've tried to put together here in an easy-to-digest format. As always, if you think this information is valuable, click like, subscribe, and share. Our history begins with the militia. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors developed entrepreneurial warfare, raiding for profit. Such warfare is voluntary and risky, so reliability is necessary. A warrior must give his oath, ensuring his fellows, or he cannot recruit men. And a warrior must report truthfully, or all may die. From this necessity, truthful speech was born. Martial men hold to the sacredness of truth and contract, if for no other reason than in battle one can bear very high costs of error, optimism, betrayal, and dishonesty. Westerners were the only people to discover truth-telling and to establish it as a commons. To establish a normative infrastructure of manners, ethics, morality, law, philosophy, and science. And so it is truth-telling that separates the West from the rest. Truth comes at a high cost. The cost of producing truthful scientific testimony under due diligence and warranty is much higher than the cost of producing lies, falsehoods, and pseudoscience without due diligence or warranty. Thorough scientific research comes with obvious costs, but even honest conversation among friends has social costs. The truth may be unflattering or offensive. It may even get you fired from a job. Making up a lie, however, can be as cheap as a bit of creative storytelling. So if lying is cheap and truth-telling is expensive, why not just lie, cheat, and deceive? Truthfulness is an investment. The investment in truth-telling and demanding truth-telling from others eventually provides much greater long-term gains than any other group strategy. High investment, high reward. The central proposition of propertarianism is the Western struggle to testify truthfully to one's jury, and that trust is the result of that struggle, and economic velocity the result of that trust, and that economic velocity is the reason for both phases of the West's rapid advancement, the classical and modern worlds, that both times have dragged man out of ignorance, and in our most recent case, dragged him out of poverty. The Indo-Europeans, Greeks, Romans, Germanics, Norse, and British all sought to organize society with truth. And this is reflected in the institutions, the law, the technology, the innovations, the wealth, and the ability to adapt to change. Truth-telling is our tradition. So what does it mean to speak truthfully? Identifying truth is like chipping away marble to form a statue. The raw marble is like an untested theory. Regardless of how we came up with that theory, we need to chip away at it to separate truth from falsehood. This method of chipping away falsehoods through testing and experimentation is known as falsification. When we have tested a theory extensively, what remains, like a beautiful statue, represents our best possible understanding of reality. Every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it. Science is a method of survival, not proof. Our best understanding of what's true can be described by what survives after our process of falsification. Eliminate falsehoods, and what survives is a truth candidate. And we must eliminate falsehoods to defend against lies, fictions, wishful thinking, deceit, and error. We cannot know what is true, but we can know what is false. Now, simply by eliminating lies and intentional deception, we can speak honestly. But truthful speech goes a step beyond that. Truthful speech is another way of describing the scientific method, and it means we've gone an extra step to eliminate error and bias. So truthful speech comes down to two things: due diligence and warranty. Due diligence means we put in the appropriate effort to eliminate bias, error, wishful thinking, and all other falsehoods. Warranty means that we are accountable for our promise that due diligence has been done. More precisely, we promise that our speech is consistent, correspondent, complete, rational, and moral, and laundered of ignorance, error, bias, wishful thinking, suggestion, obscurantism, fictionalism, and deceit. Truthful speech is not a description of ultimate truth or ideal truth. Ideal truth is that description you would give if your knowledge was complete and your language was sufficient. But our knowledge is incomplete and our language is insufficient. So truthfulness is that description you would give if your knowledge was incomplete and your language was insufficient, but you have performed due diligence in the elimination of error, imaginary thinking, wishful thinking, bias, and deceit within the scope of precision of the question you want to answer, and you warranty it to be so. Truthful speech is the promise that another person with the same knowledge and performing the same due diligence, having the same experiences, would provide the same description. And you warranty this promise. You cannot warranty the truth, but you can warranty that you have done your due diligence. That is the best we can do. And in practice, that is the reason for the difference between the West and the rest. And so it is certainly good enough. So if truth is enough, how do we make it happen? We can restore truth quite easily. We can restore the greatest mistake in history, a right to free speech instead of truthful speech. Free speech sounds great as an ideal until you really consider the costs on society, the damage done to our culture of truthfulness, and the subsequent damage to the culture of trust. You can watch any major news channel today or visit a website or listen to a political candidate, and within minutes you're bound to hear a lie. Fake news. How much do lying politicians damage our commons? How much do Hollywood fictions degrade our culture? What is the cost of a society in which trust is lost? How much longer are we going to bear this cost until we say enough? But to require truthful speech means we need a logical and scientific method for determining what is truthful speech. We must have a way to measure truthfulness so that we are not at the whim of whatever authorities tell us is true. We have been missing this particular logical system for 2,500 years. We can restore this greatest mistake in history by requiring all public speech to be warranted. This doesn't mean you can't tell a white lie to your family at the dinner table. We're talking about public speech which does observable damage to our commons. And the warranty holds the speaker accountable to any damage done. Furthermore, we can extend to all citizens the ability to go to court to defend the informational commons, allowing citizens the ability to sue liars for damages. If they lie, you make money, they pay the price, thus restoring incentives to punish liars and build a high-trust civilization. Liars must pay a high price to offset the high cost of producing truthful speech. Raise the cost of deceit so that it is higher than the cost of telling the truth, and you counteract the incentive to lie. We can insist that public speech have a warranty of truthfulness, given that we have a scientific method of identifying and eliminating falsehoods. I'm planning to make a future video going into more depth on this point, but just know that these falsehood tests do allow for a scientific evaluation of speech. Once we can test for due diligence in truthful speech, we can counteract the media's industrialization of lying. In universities, in politics, in the media and advertising, we can extend the same demand for warranty that we place on products and services to a further demand for warranty on public speech, and to allow the citizens to defend the informational commons with lawsuits. Economists, social scientists, politicians, they've been providing defective products by not providing the same warranty of truthfulness that we expect from the hard sciences. It may sound startling at first to consider limitations on freedom of speech, but free speech did not build the West. The West did not become great because any old complainer or liar or snake oil salesman could wander the streets spouting any old nonsense or lies without consequences. The greatness of the West arose from this empirical pursuit of truth at all costs. Free speech makes it impossible for the production of high-cost truth to compete with the production of low-cost fantasy, bias, error, and deceit. We must protect our investment in truth if we are going to maintain it for future generations. Now think for a second about the difference caused by the scientific revolution in the physical sciences, and imagine the improvement in our lives from a similar scientific revolution in the informational and social sciences. Imagine if no organization could use media to lie to you. Imagine how consumer protections would evolve. Imagine how the professors and the politicians would speak to us. Today, if not throughout history, we see science as physically constrained and separate from the social, moral, and spiritual subjects. But science is just the art of truth-telling. To unconstrain science from social, moral, and spiritual subjects would be a reformation on the same scale as previous generations of the scientific method, bringing the social sciences from pseudoscience into hard science. The consequence of such a reformation is not only our ability to explain all of human behavior, but to compare all human civilizations and explain scientifically why each excelled, developed, fell into stasis, regressed, was conquered, or collapsed. The next great leap in human civilization is not technology. It's morality and law, truth-telling. It will be as great a leap as science has been. There is a high cost to truth-telling, and our ancestors paid that high cost. But in each case, the cost produced extraordinary returns. If we require truthfulness, invasive religions and ideologies cannot proselytize unscientific statements, at least not in the commons. And laws based on falsehood cannot be implemented to encourage fraud and theft. A truthful world is as hard for us to imagine as the scientific world was for previous generations, as it was for the pre-literate to imagine literacy, as it was for the barbaric to imagine the urban. It will be expensive to create truthfulness, or perhaps to restore truthfulness. But the gains we will obtain will equal, if not surpass, all those previous reformations. Truth is enough. Truth and the demands of our warrior ancestors allowed us to create these commons. Truth and the rule of law are enough to restore us. We cannot know what is true, but we can know what is false. And that is enough.